Hi, friends, and welcome back. In my last piece, I talked about leadership inside private estates as a way of seeing governance that operates quietly and perceptually. What I want to do here is to show you how the same governance questions show up materially in service design, roles, and in the ways households drift when systems aren't named. I want to talk today about something I see quietly undermining luxury in private households, and it has nothing to do with the people involved. Luxury rarely fails loudly, it erodes quietly. Most ultra high net worth households don't struggle because they've hired the wrong people. They struggle because they never designed this system to those people were meant to serve in with intention. What I see again and again is not incompetence, it's drift. Households grow organically, more staff, more vendors, more travel, more entertaining. But no one ever pauses to clearly define the service environment they are intentionally building. Over time, the home becomes a hybrid of competing signals, refined in aspiration, improvised in execution, sophisticated in expectation, inconsistent in structure. That's not a staffing problem. That's a design and governance problem. We often talk about formality and functionality as if they're opposites. They're not. They are two expressions of the same objective, continuity of care. Formality makes care visible, whereas functionality makes care invisible. A formal household uses ritual, cadence, titles, and uniforms to signal stability and professionalism. A function-forward household relies on discretion, adaptability, and responsiveness to achieve the same outcomes. Both approaches can be executed at an exceptionally high level. Neither has inherent superiority. Problems arise when households try to operate in both modes at once without ever naming the tension. That's where mixed signals emerge. Professionals are hired for one purpose and deployed for another. Expectations blur, and luxury becomes fragile. What people often describe as fanciness isn't excess. It's the signal that care is being delivered intentionally and consistently. A household servicescape is not about taste or personality. It's an operating system for how care should be executed. It governs behavior, authority, cadence, and trust. Families often describe what they want emotionally: comfortable but elevated, formal when entertaining, relaxed day to day. These are emotional cues, but without translating those preferences into operational design. And then when that translation doesn't happen, staffing becomes reactive. Roles are added as complexity increases instead of being designed to hold the complexity. Organizational research has shown the environments are not neutral backdrops. They actively shape how people behave and how authority is recognized and how trust is built. Mary Jo Bittner's foundational work on servicescapes demonstrate that the physical, social, and symbolic cues a space quietly instructs people how roles are interpreted and how power moves through a system. In private households, that means the environment isn't just aesthetic, it's governing. So before staffing decisions are made, a household has to answer a few core questions. Is care meant to be expressed ceremonially or embedded seamlessly? Should professionalism be signaled overtly or assumed quietly? Are titles and uniforms meant to anchor behavior or simply denote competence? These aren't aesthetic questions. They're governance questions. And when they go unanswered, households drift into hybrid systems that rely on individuals compensating for when the structure never defined. One of the most costly mistakes households make is trying to define their servicescape through staffing instead of defining the servicescape first. Adding roles without a clearly designed system in place creates overlap, dilutes expertise, and leads to decision fatigue. The real question is not, do we need this role or that role? The question is, what kind of service environment are we intentionally building, and what kind of service signals are required to uphold it? Only then do roles, titles, and hospitality presence make sense. Let me offer a clean analogy here. A cardiologist does not stop being a cardiologist because of the environment that they work in. Their expertise and judgment remains consistent based on years of training and knowledge in the field. What changes is how that professionalism is expressed. In a geriatric ward, for example, a traditional white lab coat signals authority and reassurance by the doctor. For patients with cognitive decline, that visual cue matters. Conversely, in a children's hospital, the same lab coat worn by a doctor can feel frightening. So the cardiologist may wear brightly colored scrubs or even a Disney character t-shirt to better engage with their patients. That doesn't diminish their professionalism. It adapts to the service culture of the environment. Professionalism isn't defined by the uniform. It's expressed through the uniform in service of the environment. Private households operate under the same principle and often miss it. Within luxury homes exists a highly specialized form of hospitality, ceremonial, guest facing hospitality. This is not general service. It's a disciplined professional craft grounded in presence, timing, restraint, and social fluency. This is a lane traditionally held by the butler. A butler is trained not just in what to do, but in how to be. Years of preparation go into details most people never consciously notice: movement, pacing, anticipation, restraint. A helpful parallel is that of a geisha. A geisha is not a general helper or administrator. She undergoes years of training to master presence, timing, and calibrated interactions. Her role is to hold the hospitality space, not to manage logistics. In both cases, excellence depends on not being distracted. When ceremonial hospitality is treated as flexible labor, when specialists are pulled into administrative work, the experience becomes brittle. What's lost isn't the polish, what's lost is the coherence. It's also important to name something that often gets lost in this conversation. Many highly effective estate managers carry deep butler training with them, as I have. They've worked in both lanes. In those cases, the butler skill set doesn't disappear, it simply just runs in the background. Just as a doctor doesn't stop being a specialist when they move into a different ward, a professional doesn't lose their hospitality mastery because their title or uniform changes. The expertise remains constant. What shifts is where and how that hospitality expertise is expressed. A highly competent estate manager may still know how to set a formal table, pour wine flawlessly, or manage a room with quiet precision. But those skills are deployed selectively in service of the broader system. Those skills are available when the household needs them, but they don't define the role. And they make the estate manager a stronger leader for the hospitality specialists that they oversee. The distinction isn't about capability, it's about where the professional is positioned within the system and which skill set shines in the process. When governance is the primary responsibility, ceremonial hospitality becomes a background asset rather than the main lane. And when that distinction is understood and respected, households benefit from both without confusing one for the other. This is why governance requires a different architecture. Complex households need leadership that can hold systems, people, vendors, and workflows simultaneously. That's the role of the estate manager, the expert generalist. Where ceremonial hospitality is experiential, estate management is architectural. It coordinates rather than performs. It stabilizes rather than signals. Historically, this separation was explicit. In Edwardian estates, the butler was never the apex of the staffing structure. They were a dining room attendant. The administrator and managerial role belonged to the major domo, which is a parallel for our estate managers today. When households collapse these lanes, the system begins to rely on individual heroics rather than structure. Most households don't falter because of the poor intentions or bad talent. They fail because they drift into systems that were never designed with intention. Luxury declines not because households choose the wrong people, but because they never designed the system those people were meant to serve in. The gold standard should be design the system first and then staff second. That's how luxury finally has room to breathe. If this conversation resonates, it may be worth stepping back to name the service environment you're actually trying to create and whether your household architecture truly supports it in a professional way. Thank you, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.